Hey, everybody. Thank you all for being here. I am delighted to have my first interview of 2023. By the way, next Friday, I have Bloomberg on the channel. But to kick off 2023 I'm very proud to introduce Farzad. Anybody who knows Tesla knows who he is, and he's a machine on Twitter as well. So, how are you today, Farzad?
I'm great, man. You just said you're gonna have Bloomberg on your interview, like on your channel next week, and
Yeah,
I'm like, who the hell am I to be on this channel? But thank you, man. I really appreciate that very kind introduction. I'm very excited to sit down and speak with you.
that's
Honored.
awesome. And just also make sure I share this with the audience too. They can see this is Farzad's YouTube channel, and you just got started with YouTube, correct?
That's
And
correct. Yeah, I started about a year ago. Yeah.
awesome. And you have to follow him on Twitter. It's hilarious. But, to kick all this off, I want today's story really to be much more around not only who you are, your experience, but to help the audience gauge where the world is going. Because we are seeing S curves collide. We're seeing pace of development across AI, bots is just staggering. And I always call it a very exciting time to be alive. But considering bots are your thing, you often wear a bot t-shirt. Do you mind if we jump in there and talk about bots first? Like, especially when you say the
Sure.
bots are coming. Tell us where that came from.
Yeah, for me, by the way, I feel like I'm getting too much credit. I really appreciate sort of this introduction, and really it's a passion of mine to really think about the future and really just trying to figure out where we're going to go as a society. It's a hobby that turned into something more. I think I really have fun exploring this with my viewership and people like you. But the whole premise of the robots is coming is really around the advancements in AI and automation and robotics that we're undergoing right now. And it really became, for me, solidified once Tesla announced their project, the Optimus project, where they're really trying to figure out how to bring automation, real world automation, into everyone's homes to try and make humanity, I guess, better, more efficient, maximize the amount of happiness people can experience in a lifetime by removing a lot of menial tasks, boring tasks, and things like that. But then you also have this sort of revolution that has been going on in society with automation and AI, especially ChatGPT just launched a few weeks ago, and that's blowing everybody's minds and is showing the potential of what AI and automation looks like. So it's just speaking to this thing that we're going through as a society. We had a presidential candidate in the United States in 2020 that ran under this premise of a heavily automated future and what we need to do about it. And for me, it's like, it's just fascinating for me to really think through this, because it's happening. You can see it around you. You can feel it around you. And I don't think a lot of people have the time or the energy to sit down and really think through the implications of this on a regular basis, because there's so much going on in people's lives. They got to work, they got to take care of family, they got to do all this stuff, where such a game-changing technology could be extremely disruptive unless all of us as a society come together and start thinking through it a little bit more deeply, because there's some potential dangers there, but there's also incredible, powerful things that could happen that are positive for society. So it's just something that I'm really passionate about, and it's tied to a lot of my content. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
No, it's cool. Like, we'll talk about Optimist for a second. I've done some modeling on that actually, and how big I believe it could be in the future. I can actually pop up. We're gonna be jumping around everybody today. In the audience, we have a lot of ground to cover, and no better person to discuss all of this. But one of the pieces I do have is this, and it may be hard to see. Let me try go full screen on this one. But I do believe the Tesla Optimus Bot could, now theoretically, this is no financial advice on this channel at all, but it could definitely hit or add an additional 3.5 trillion to Tesla market cap in the next 8 to 10 years. And that's based on the sheer demand that I believe could easily be there for these bots as we go forward. Let me try and jump into this. I'm not good at this right now. I don't know, for some reason I can't share this. I can't click on it. But anyway, the point is, I do believe the market cap addition could be about the $3.5 trillion at about $1,180 for the share price as we go forward. There it is.
Now I share my screen. I don't know if maybe I can drive it if you can.
Oh, yeah. Bingo.
Yeah. I'll be producer wife.
She's awesome. You rock. But here, because you're a math guy, my channel's about math and numbers, so this is awesome. But I do believe, and I looked at all the people kind of doing tasks that could be done by a bot, whether it's making a coffee or carrying a box across a factory floor or anything else. Calculated a number of those workers, how much they typically earn on average per year, took a market share 10 years out of about 10% of that workforce could be done by a bot, and assuming that Tesla gets 50% market share, and the average cost per bot about $40,000, that brought up revenue of about $307 billion, which is astronomical. It's hard to even wrap your head around that, but you have to take into account things like
numbers.
Debasement of brain. But have you done any modeling around the actual bot itself?
I have. I mean, I put out a video a long time ago that tried to model this, like from an implication, like what are the implications of this technology actually reaching mainstream, and what does it mean from like the market capitalization perspective for the company? I think there's two big things going on. One is if the bot is sold in a way that is trying to maximize the profits of Tesla, and it's trying to become this thing where it's a profit driver and it capitalizes on that gap of where workforce is versus what the bot could offer, and reduce the chances of you having to rehire somebody, any insurance cost, the fact that bot is probably could be faster than your average employee, so on and so forth. I mean, it's very easy to calculate just how big of a transformation this could be for Tesla from a financial perspective. So if the average worker in the United States, as an example, gets paid, I don't know, $35,000 per year, but you can manufacture a bot that costs, I don't know, $15,000 to $20,000 net to Tesla, and they sell it for, say, an upfront cost of $40,000 to $50,000. That's a one-time cost. Whereas that person, you have to keep paying $35,000 every year. Over 10 years, if the bot lasts that long, that's a $350,000 you got to pay an employee that does a job that's similar to a bot, versus only paying an upfront cost of $40,000, $50,000 once. And so that means that $280,000, $90,000 gap is where Tesla could theoretically profit, right? But where my head has been going to as of late is, I wonder how much the bot is just going to be a giant deflationary force on labor, on repetitive labor, things that are dangerous. So if you just conceptualize any sort of manual job in your head, uh, in say 10 to 20 years time, that job, like say, I don't know, a construction worker or somebody that works in a, mowing the lawn, whatever job you want to pick, that could be a $15 per hour job today, as an example. But in 10, 20 years time with this, it could be a 50-cent per hour job because it's so abundant and it's been disrupted, right? That you have this technology that has come in, and it would follow a similar cost curve than any other disruptive technology, like the computer. It started at $20 million for one computer in your room, or whatever that number is. Now you can have a $500 phone in your pocket that's, a million times more capable than that computer was. So I think I'm starting to warm up to the idea that that's where a lot of this repetitive physical labor that the bot could take care of, that's the kind of impact we're going to see. And I'm curious to see what that implies for the market capitalization of Tesla. Like, how do they ride that cost curve down? But the potential is insane. I mean, it's
Yeah.
completely mind-boggling because you're freeing up the economy so much by doing that.
Now we
Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
definitely does. In fact, you hit on another thing I was thinking about is that abundance of labor, cheap labor. It could make society flourish, but it could also hurt people and take away a lot of jobs. There's a lot of talk now about, should Amazon deliver packages with drones, or could you let your Model 3 run around the neighborhood and be packed and loaded by a warehouse, and then go to somebody's door, they step out of their door and take whatever out of the passenger seat, or a robotaxi, all that type of stuff. That potential is also mind-blowing. A lot of people are concerned about that. What would it do to people who work at, I can't remember the service that is a place like Costco, where they deliver your groceries, you buy them, and they add a 10% margin.
Yeah, I know exactly. Food cart or something. I forget the name of the service.
Instacart. Yeah. That's it. Instacart.
Instacart. There you go. Yeah.
Like that would destroy so many industries that are out there. But it is just unfathomable. Do you think Tesla will be the main bot competitor? Because you have got Boston Dynamics who've been building robots for 20 years. A lot of people say, oh, Boston Dynamics, they have it in the bag. But the pace at which Tesla has proven that they can manufacture, and the way FSD, I have FSD in my X, it blows my mind every single day, even this morning coming here. What's your take? Do you think Tesla will be the leader in bots, or there will be another magical competitor arising?
I mean, for me, it's like which company is going to be able to capitalize on mass manufacturing of a robot that is helpful in real life, right? If you look at what Boston Dynamics, as an example, has put together, phenomenal company. Let's not get it like twisted. Like they are obviously brilliant. They've gotten this thing to do like insane demonstrations of what's capable with a robot, right? But is it useful? Is it something that actually is useful that could contribute to the economy? Is it something that could help humans do their jobs better or to open up brand new industries that haven't existed before? And so, what do you need in order to make that happen? You need theoretically hands that work similarly to a human or something that makes it so that the robot can be helpful in real life and they can do it reliably and that they don't have to be supervised and it doesn't try to kill you and it does so that it's extremely affordable that it makes sense to be to replace the human, right? And I think that's where Tesla has an edge because they're not really investing in look at what this robot can do from the standpoint of insane balance and power and everything. They're investing all their money into hands, like being able to grab things. They're investing money in the AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, so that it can perceive what the real world looks like and it can interact with objects in real life. They're investing in the manufacturing process, right, to figure out how can we get this robot to be as cheap as humanly possible and as repeatable as humanly possible so we can flood the market with these things. These are two very different approaches. And so the question becomes, is Boston Dynamics, as an example, a company that has the expertise to do mass manufacturing and really hone in on what's truly important to disrupt the economy, or do they not? And that question obviously is up for debate. I think we're very early on, but I do think Tesla's expertise and mass manufacturing and really investing heavily into AI, which is going to be incredibly important for the bot to be truly useful in any use case, is the true differentiator. And I don't know anyone else that's nowhere near the where Tesla is now, but it's still way early, right? It's still really early. I think Tesla's prior execution sort of track record would tell me, somebody who's very bullish on the company and is very positive on the company, tells me that whatever they put their mind towards, I believe they'll become the leader. But there's still a long way to go. But the fact that we're already talking about a prototype potentially hitting a factory floor and helping them out potentially sometime this year or next year is insane.
Is
It's
insane.
crazy. So
Do you
when
think?
when is it going to come to the public? You know?
Yeah. Do you think if the bot business became big for Tesla or the Megapack business, etc., do you think they'd spin those entities out, or keep everything under the Tesla roof to be that $4 trillion company that Elon talks about, the biggest company in the world?
I think they'll probably keep it under one roof because it's manufacturing and engineering anyway,
Yeah.
right? It's if you really think about it, it's if you're making a mega pack or a car or a battery or a robot, what you're doing is you're just engineering, you're making. So I think it's probably in Tesla's best interest to keep everything under one roof, so it's as easy as possible for the talent to flow around the company freely. From an organizational standpoint, it makes sense to keep it under one roof. But when it comes to like accounting or how they want it listed on the stock market, I have no idea. They might be able to say split out the businesses so it's easier for investors to invest in the subdivision, and they can still have sort of an umbrella where anybody can kind of float around the companies. But I don't know. I do think they'll probably keep it under one roof if I were to guess, but who knows? Who
That'd be
knows?
good. And given you did hit on AGI, so I want to circle back on that one.
Sure.
There's a lot of people now talking about, I think it was MIT may have crafted the term technological singularity. It's just when AGI is developed and it can think faster, better, quicker than humans. Um, and you said as well, hope they don't kill you, which is stuff that one of Elon Musk's biggest fear. But how far do you think this AGI, this technological singularity, could be away? And is it fiction? Is it futurism? And is it dangerous?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the eye-opening things that have been happening lately, so things like the computer, I forget the name of the computer, but the one that beat the best Go player in the world. That's a pretty big development in AI. Then you have ChatGPT, which is actually displacing software developers in some sense.
Yeah.
I have friends that work at companies where they have to create code, and they can just go to ChatGPT and be like, "Hey, write me code that does this," and then 3 seconds later you have it. So there's a lot of implications there. Um, I man, I would sort of deflect to folks that are closer to that technology, but I wouldn't be surprised if the world is completely different in 20 years' time. Just like if you think back 20 years ago, think back to 2000, right, when 9/11 happened here in the States around that time, the world was completely different. It was completely, completely different, especially around things like the internet and automation at workplaces and accessibility to having these very powerful tools that allow you to be, 3, 4, 5 times more productive because of those tools. So, take that higher base and then put another 4, 5x again in the next 20 years in some arenas, but then extrapolate that out to things like self-driving cars and robots and what other things that we do as humans that could be disrupted from that sense as well. So I don't know, man. It's for me, it will happen. The timing is up for debate. It could be 20 years, it could be 100 years, but it's happening. If humans keep going on this path, it's going to happen eventually. And I
Yeah.
don't think it's too early to talk about what the implications are as a society. Unfortunately, I think humans tend to wait too long before something hits them in the face that kind of sucks for some people,
Yeah.
or in this case, it could be a lot of people. And I think it really speaks deeply to the human spirit and why we exist in the first place. Like if robotics and AI really take away what we deem as jobs today, will the quote unquote new jobs of the future be more fulfilling or less fulfilling, right? Because in some ways, I would say that a lot of the jobs we do today are less fulfilling than they used to be because I think there's more of a nature of you're just a number and you get thrown in and out of places versus maybe 100 years ago there was in some sense more pride in the work you did, but there was also things like slavery, like these brutal things when it comes to making the future that were very dark side of humanity. So it's all encapsulated under one umbrella for me.
Yeah.
And but that's where we're going, right? Like, are we having those types of discussions? I don't think so. And I don't think it's ever too early to talk about that.
That's funny. You mentioned your channel is 1 year old. Mine is 2 years old, almost to the day. And
Nice. Congrats.
again, I've been kind of urging people to go down a path. And I always say, pick a career that a machine cannot do. Things that require creativity and stuff like that. What would you tell younger generations today? Maybe people in college, going to college, thinking about a career change. What word of advice would you give them?
I would say just figure out how to be as helpful as humanly possible to humanity. Like, and that's a very broad statement. But ultimately, I think what people value most is somebody helping them be happier or helping their life be easier. I think that those are the two big things that come to mind when I think about career advice. I could come up with 1,000 examples today. I don't know, develop an app that makes somebody's life a little bit easier. Develop a service that removes a bottleneck that people constantly experience in their lives. I know like things like elderly care is something that's being revolutionized right now, where people are really starting to really invest a lot of time to figure out how to make that easier for people. I don't know, like there's just so many different opportunities in life to make someone's life better, but ultimately it's how can you make someone's life happier or helpful. And as we have more AI tools and robotic tools that come online that directly do that for humans where a human is not involved, that pool becomes smaller, or we have to get more creative based on what the population demands or something that's out there that nobody knows they want that you can bring forward. Um, that would be my general advice as far as like specific careers go. I think that's too personal of a question because everybody's different. And so what I would encourage everybody to think through is like, okay, having those two things in mind, how to be helpful and how to bring value and make somebody happy. uh, Start thinking about things you might be good at that coincide with that sort of bubble, and see where the Venn diagram appears between those two things.
That's brilliant. So I think we've beaten bots and AI to death. I didn't want to derail the whole conversation, but let's talk about alpha and stocks and investments because I'm very interested. You talk about future technologies a lot. What's in your portfolio? What's the breakdown? I know there's a big bag of Tesla somewhere,
Oh,
but
yeah.
anything else in there
It's
that the
just
audience would like to know?
right now stocks is 100% Tesla right now, and
No
I have
conviction there at all.
none. It's just whatever. Just there you go. The
Yeah.
significant percentage of my net worth. Go ahead. So that's that. I also have real estate. That's a majority of like my net worth. If you want to think about it, that's where it is. But from a stock perspective, it's 100% Tesla, and then I have a tiny bit of crypto. I have a little bit of Bitcoin, a little bit of Dogecoin, a little bit of that shall not be named based on the feedback you gave me before we came on,
I,
but it's super small. I mean, it's like
yeah.
insignificant. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Sometimes things are just for pure fun or speculation.
sure.
I used to describe Dogecoin as something you'd use at a baseball park to buy hot dogs or something, perhaps.
Fun.
But now the Doge army will be after me. So, but that's great. You have some Bitcoin. Where do you see that going? Do you track, you know, government money printing, all that type of stuff? Do you think you need a hard asset for you and your family like Bitcoin, or you just have it because it's the trendy thing to have?
I have it because I think there's a lot of utility to the technology. So the way I think about Bitcoin is so I have family that's in Iran, and Iran has a very unstable economy. It has an unstable government. It's like there's a lot of opinions out there, but I think a lot of people would agree that it's not in the best. It's not looking out for the best will of the people, and so there's a lot of distrust in that. And so what happens is that an economy of a country like that usually is not great. The currency of that country usually can't be trusted because the government can just be like, whatever, 100% inflation, 200% inflation due to monetary policy or whatever. So what I've seen Bitcoin become, especially for a lot of countries and societies where they don't have that stable government that can generate a stable currency, is that Bitcoin has become a way for people to transact value and do so without a third party. They just go like, we all agree that we trust this thing. And so I'm going to send you this much and you send me this much. And then we can exchange value in exchange for services. And all you need is a phone and the internet. So that
Yeah.
to me is like, okay, that's a very eye-opening thing. But it requires the trust and the agreement from the people to say, this is valuable. This thing is valuable. And so if we look at Bitcoin for the last, and again, I wouldn't consider myself a Bitcoin expert, but conceptually speaking, this is how I think about Bitcoin. So if you think back to when it was first launched in 2009, 2010, correct me if I'm wrong, somewhere around there. Um, I mean, I was going to call it the stock. The price of it has gone up. I mean, yeah, it's got this crazy stuff going on, but the inherent value of a Bitcoin is going up over time, and it's doing so somewhat reliably. Even as of late, I think it's at 23,000 last time I checked yesterday or the day before. It hit a bottom of like what 14 or 16,000. I forget what the numbers were exactly.
Yeah.
What was it at?
15.5 was the bottom.
15.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of come back a little bit, but there is value. There is value there, and are there a lot of speculators in Bitcoin? Of course, just like there's a lot of speculators in Tesla and any other disruptive technology. But I do think it has inherent value. I think it's around trust, and I think it's around providing a society something they feel like it's incorruptible.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately that's what's most important behind the technology. And it sort of vibes with me deeply because humans are incredible things. We're incredible beings, but we're also very easily corruptible and we love power. And if we can come up with a solution like, say, a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin that removes one of those potential risks in a way by making it truly decentralized, where not an individual entity can have power over what happens to it, I feel like that's a very powerful thing. Is it going to be the world currency? I don't think so. But is it going to be something that's truly inherently valuable? Yes. And as more of the world's population starts using that in that manner, if that's the case, if that's the way they use it, then the law of economics and finance and whatever you want to say will say that with a limited something that is a limited asset that is capped at a certain amount, each individual piece of that asset will go up over time. So
Yeah.
that's how I think about Bitcoin.
Well, you
Yeah.
framed that perfectly for somebody who doesn't consider them a Bitcoin expert, but it triggered a thought in my mind as well regarding that. I'm fascinated by things like the corruption of mainstream media and the incompetency of many analysts on Wall Street. And, you're obviously a smart guy. Some of the smartest people I've ever worked with have come from Persia. So that explains
Nice.
a lot. Um,
All right.
but how come Wall Street analysts can't wrap their heads around Tesla or Bitcoin? Some of the smartest people in the world have, like Elon Musk's and some of the best capital allocators. But the majority of professional allocators are clueless. Even people that I thought were brilliant for a long time, like the Gene Munsters of the world and others. Can you tell me what's missing, what chromosome is missing from their mind? Or is it just, they keep saying, this is just another car company. So have you thought about that? Because that blows my. I watch sometimes CNBC and I hear these talking heads on TV, and I was like, why does this TV channel even have them on the TV? They're obviously incompetent. You know?
Yeah, man, I don't know. That's a fascinating question. It's funny you asked that. So, what's funny is that book right behind me that I have up. It's probably blurred, but that's The Psychology of Money. I don't know how many of your crew, if you've read it. I just started reading it a couple of days ago. It's mind blowing to me. Just how many nuggets, things that were I intuitively kind of like thought through, like the book sort of walked me through again, and it's like fascinating to see it from a different angle. But it talks about some of those concepts as to why is it why could it be so difficult for a percentage of the population to be so on the other side of like a Tesla story, for example? Whereas for I think for you and I, and probably a significant portion of your viewing sort of crowd, that they might think that Tesla is a no-brainer investment and this is just the beginning and there's a gigantic amount of potential and it's generational. Like, how come we see that and they don't?
Yeah.
One of them could be that we're all dumb. Like, we are wrong. You know what I'm saying? So that's one of the outcomes.
We are the great.
However,
Yeah.
what's
We are
what's
the
that?
greater fool. You ever hear
Yeah, we're the greater fool.
Yeah.
The greater fool theory, exactly. Yeah, we're just a bunch of dummies. But I don't think that's it. I think what it is, it's that a lot of people probably draw their I don't know how they view companies from their lived experience. And when a disruptive company comes along, it's not believed until it has reached its full potential. Then everybody else jumps on because it requires a lot of due diligence to figure out exactly what is going on with that company. I don't think it's intuitive for people, for most people, to understand why Tesla is such a game changing company, because it's never happened before, unless you're going back to the Model T. And thinking about how a individual piece of technology revolutionized transportation. Right now, that when the Ford Model T came along, we went from horses to vehicles, and then everybody else made vehicles. So that's great. And so what they're saying now is like, cool, that's exactly what's going to happen. Tesla's going to come out with a vehicle, and now everybody else is going to make a vehicle. But I think, excuse me, what I think what's playing out right now, if you track the auto segment, is that Tesla is so far ahead and accelerating their progress that until somebody catches up to Tesla and what they're doing, it's going to be far too late. Meaning that your Ford, your GMs, your Toyotas, your BMWs, or Mercedes, and everybody, any other company here, they're not going to have enough time to make an electric vehicle and survive as a company by the time they get to that ramping point of, say, 1 million cars per year or 2 million cars per year, which implies that the market share for vehicles is up for grabs. It's completely up for grabs because you've taken the number of players from what people perceive as to be all the legacy OEMs plus all the newcomers to whoever can make electric vehicles at scale. And the only two companies that I know of that can do that are Tesla and BYD. That's it. That's
Yep.
it. Going to make about 2 million this year. BYD is probably going to do like 1.5 ish, 1.4 ish, and they're going to be at very different segments as well. But you're talking about 4 million EVs per year from two players, roughly 3.5, that are selling into a total addressable market of 1.4 billion vehicles. There's 1.4 billion vehicles in the world right now that are gas cars, that are not electric vehicles. It's like 97% of the total vehicle fleet on the planet Earth is gas.
Mm.
And it's obvious that we're going towards electric. And so how long is it going to take to replace that fleet? Probably 20, 30 years. And then as you lower the per mile cost of transportation through electric vehicles and automation, you dramatically open up the pool of people that can afford a vehicle or a transportation unit, whatever you want to call it. So right now there is 8 billion people on planet Earth. There's 1.4 billion cars on planet Earth, call it. So it's roughly, so it's one for every 8 person right now is able to afford a vehicle, right? But what happens when we get to a point where 8 out of 8 people can afford a vehicle or have access to a transportation unit? This is where I think a lot of folks are not. This is where the potential is being lost. Is that just because everybody else could make an electric car doesn't mean that the pie is gigantic. And so for that pie to be filled, it's going to take decades of time. And by the time Tesla becomes a has been and they're like, oh, they're just another Nokia, they're going to go from a whatever market cap they are right now to whatever that market cap is in 30 years. And you layer on energy, and you layer on the bot, and you layer on solar, and you layer on whatever else they come out with. And so that's the Tesla investing thesis. I don't think a lot of people view it that way. They look at the balance sheet and the P&L and they're like, oh, number go up or down, maybe not a good investment. Yeah, but it's very different.
So this always fascinates me because I remember it was like 21, 22 years ago. I was at a barbecue and I was trying to convince the people there of how everything will be search in the future. And then layer on things like location-based search, et cetera, and then have it all in your phone and all this type of stuff. But people have a hard time wrapping their heads around that type of disruption. And nobody 20 years ago would have thought the biggest company in the world would be a company that makes predominantly iPhones. It's ridiculous. And I remember I've had Jeff Booth on the channel a few times, and he spoke about exponentiality and how humans have a hard time wrapping their heads around exponentiality. And he talks about the 34 fold or fold 34, whatever, of a napkin, how it would reach the moon, although it's theoretically impossible. But how would you help people understand this exponentiality and things like colliding S curves to really understand what Tesla is? Because no matter how much I try, they say, oh, bad quality, and the electric grid won't be able to support so many electric cars, and like the myriad of responses I get are just brain mind numbing sometimes. But we have to engage them and try bring them around. So, if you were to explain to somebody in 3 sentences or less how they would understand the exponentiality and colliding S curves of Tesla, how would you do it?
That's a hell of a question, bro. I don't know. In 3 sentences. So I mean, I can tell you how I would, the way why I'm have so much conviction in the story is sort of tied to how I described it. Is there's 1.4 billion cars in the world that are gas cars, and all of them will turn into electric vehicles because that is clearly and obviously the next generation technology because it's cheaper to run. So from a economics perspective, it makes way more sense than a gas car. It has no maintenance, which it removes any hassle versus a gas car. Okay. And it's much more easily scalable, meaning that you can create a lot more units for the amount of material and money you put into it over time once it's fully ramped up. So the net number of units you're going to be able to get by for the same amount of effort is going to be more. So for like the economic force is there. So all you have to do from a technology perspective is to get it to be cheap enough so it's producible. Tesla has done that. Great. So if they've done that, then where my head goes to is like, okay, so what is the ramp to be able to fill up the entire fleet of 1.4 billion cars in the planet? If Tesla gets to 20 million units per year, say, that's still going to take Tesla individually decades. It's going to take them so long to get to the 1.4 billion number. So other players have to come in. But how long is it going to take realistically for that to happen? And so you can very easily see that to get to where they need to go, if they're at the current levels, it's never going to happen. They have to ramp. And so that exponentiality is right there, right? Like they have to ramp their production. And for them to get to the full number of 1.4 billion cars on the road, it's going to take a long time. So very good. So what is the track record? And then I go back and say, okay, so do they have a track record of execution? Can they actually do this? In 2010, Tesla sold like 1,000 EVs. In 2013 or 2023 alone, they're going to sell almost 2 million EVs. So they're already proving that they can do this. And if you look at their financials, they're showing that they're not only doing this profitably, they're doing this more profitably than anybody else on planet Earth with zero advertising. with zero advertising. Okay.
Yeah,
So this is something that's selling itself.
exactly.
So the
I
and
always
you
tell
the
people.
room you have to run is crazy, you know?
So I'm glad you said that
Yeah.
is selling itself, because I always tell people beware of anything that's pushed hard. It's probably a scam. Anything that's
Right.
advertised hard, pumped hard, shilled hard, pushed hard. Be careful. I threw up a quick chart here of kind of the ramp across the different products, and we've gone down the Tesla path a little earlier than I wanted, but that's okay. We're dancing around here. I want to talk about one vehicle. And you've seen these numbers. I think we could be at 20 million cumulative units by 2026. That 20 million is a big number. It's also the target production number I have, many other people have, of units. I've got about 20.8 million units by the year 2030 made in the year 2030. But there's certain things happening right now. One, I want to pick your mind, is the Model Y the perfect car? Because this particular model is selling like hotcakes in China, in Germany, in Norway, in the United States, California, etc. I think it is the number one luxury car by revenue on planet Earth, the number one selling car across Europe, etc. Where is this mind-boggling to you, or have they
Yeah.
nailed the perfect car?
I mean, I think what it is, it's a testament that Tesla has a product that's relatively high priced if you really think about it. It's not a cheap car. It's cheaper now. I mean, things happened today specifically that made it cheaper in the United States, which is great. But it's not a cheap car, but people are buying it to the point where it's likely going to be the best-selling vehicle period in 2023, let alone all those stats that you said for 2022. But in 2023, it's likely to become the best-selling transportation vehicle period on planet Earth from a unit perspective and a revenue perspective, with zero advertising. That there's no reason to say that it's not one of the if the best car out there. And people have done, the company has done basically nothing for that to happen. It's just happening organically. It's happening by people like me going on YouTube and saying how much they love the company. It's happening by a couple, Twitter posts out there and people buying their cars and going to their neighbors and nagging them to take a test drive. And
Yep.
people are like, oh my God, this is amazing. Or people just approaching me like, oh my God, I love this car. Elon Musk is great. It's happening organically. And it's already getting to that point with the Model Y. And they're not even maximize the production of that car either, right? And you think about the kind of markets they're entering with that vehicle, it's disrupting what it means to purchase a $50,000 car. Because typically, when you think of $50,000 car, you think expensive. You think, man, I got to save up a bunch of money, and then I got to deal with the gas, I got to deal with the insurance. The loan's going to be an arm and a leg, but I want it. I want it because it makes I want it to make me feel good, and I love the styling, and it's comfortable, and it's safe, and all this stuff. Now you got people that are like would have bought a $30,000 car. They go up to a $50,000 car because the effective monthly price of that car is about the same of a $30,000 car. And so you have this stretch of people coming up to the car to buy. And you think about the utility of the vehicles, a lot of room, super sporty, handles well, very comfortable. I mean, I could keep going. I sound like a freaking Tesla spokesperson, right? That's like I'm a crazy
Safety
person
going off
here.
Devil's Slide.
Yeah,
Like I've ridden bicycles past that hill, cars
exactly.
1,000 times, like nearly 260
Insane.
feet, hitting rocks, and everybody surviving. That is, uh, if there was an
Crazy.
advertisement, that should be the advertisement. Safety first. But do you
Exactly.
believe?
And Tesla
Yeah,
has done zero work for that.
yeah. Getting back to ICE parity, because you talked about all these huge numbers and everything else. Are we below ICE parity yet when you take into account TCO?
In some cases, you are. So I did a TCO, meaning total cost of ownership. Yeah.
Yep.
So if I did an exercise on my channel with two cars. I took the lowest trim Tesla Model 3, and I took the lowest trim Toyota Camry, and I did an 8-year cost of ownership study where I take into
I love
account maintenance
that.
costs
Yeah.
and fuel costs. And the Model 3 was cheaper than a Toyota Camry,
Hmm.
a luxury car that it has significantly better performance than a Toyota Camry is cheaper to own over 8 years than a Camry. And this is without the company coming out with a $30,000 car or $25,000 car, which is that Gen 3 platform they're going to unveil here on March 1st on their investor day. So yeah, we've reached cost parity in some respects, but it depends where your bracket is, right? If you're talking about can somebody who's looking for a $20,000 car, can they afford a Tesla? No, of course not, not right now, but they will, and that's what Tesla is working towards. And where is the competition for that segment? The Chevy Bolt doesn't really fit that because Chevy doesn't make money on the Chevy Bolt, and they're capped at 100,000 units produced per year. They don't have capacity to grow that any further. Whereas Tesla is going to invest millions of units per year, and so it becomes a capacity game at that point, leveraging your capacity. So, um, yeah, it's just definitely on pair with many gas cars right now, especially if you go $15,000 below where the existing cars are right now, but it's only going to continue to get better as they release cheaper and cheaper products.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time looking at elasticity of consumers. Would you be able
Mm.
to share the audience, because you've done some work on this? I can't remember which video I saw it in of yours, but I was like, this is music to my ears. Somebody speaking my language. Is as the price for every $1,000 or $5,000 the price of vehicle drops,
Yeah.
how much market you open up? Do you
Yeah.
maybe can you
I know
share?
exactly what you're talking about.
Yep.
Let me see if I can. It wasn't a video. I don't. Oh man,
And
I know
maybe
we
it's
did a live stream on this
something.
recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a tweet from Matthias Fons. Maybe I can find it. But what it basically was, damn, I gotta find it. It's gonna take me a while. I don't know if we
No,
want to
don't worry.
make the audience. Yeah, so I can kind of walk you through it.
Yep.
So think of it as so. Let me see. It, let me see. Okay, here we go. So we have a chart here, right? We have a chart of sorts here. This is mirrored, so I'm not going to confuse myself. Let's just
It's
say you have an x-axis that you go from cheapest to most expensive, right? So you have a $20,000 car and then a $100,000 car, all right? And then here you have market share. You have 0% market share, 100% market share, meaning like cumulatively as you go down the price of the vehicle, how much more market share you open up as you go down the price curve. So at like say $50,000, you only have about call it 10% of the market share available to like those cars that are $50,000 or more expensive is 10% of total market share. So the total units sold in any given market that's 50,000 or above consists of only 10%. But between uh 50,000 and 35,000 is like
yep.
35%. And then between 35,000 to 20,000 is basically 55%. So you start entering these giant pools of customers that didn't exist before as you write down the cost curve. And so it's not a linear function. If you go, so say Tesla is selling, their average selling price right now is probably going to be around $50,000. And at around $50,000 in 2023, they're going to be able to sell 2 million cars per year, ramping to 3 million cars per year, most likely. And they'll probably, the average selling price will probably come down to say 47,000 by then. And we're not even talking about full self driving. Just remove that from the equation. Okay. So $47,000 at 3 million. If they are able to get there, if they're able to launch a car that's say 30,000 or 25,000, their sales don't double, they quadruple, they
Mm.
quintuple because the buying base at those price levels are significant, are exponentially bigger. I mean, just think about it conceptually. How many of your friends or family that you have, you know, can't afford a $50,000 car, but they can afford a $25,000 car? You know, it's the pool is massive. Tesla's not playing in this pool yet. And so their long-term potential from a unit perspective is gigantic. And then you think about their full self-driving technology and all the things they can do from services. They have a screen there, you know, in the car that can become an entertainment hub. Once you start flooding the market with these cheaper vehicles, then you have a software as a true software as a service company. What other automaker can do that? Nobody.
Yeah. And,
Nobody.
and I saw
We're not even talking about that.
And I saw some crazy stats, probably because of the discounts. Like in Germany, I think January 2022 to January 2023, they had
Mm.
991% sales increase of the Model Y. But maybe the part of that is because of production, etc. But also December to January in China, up 61%, just because of that price decrease. So it's already having a huge impact. So let's talk about growth and the earnings call and what I call sandbagging from hell. The production rate we know is about 1.8 million cars. Literally, if China runs and Fremont runs, those two factories alone can make it happen pretty much. So gravy is Berlin and Austin. Where do you see 2023 going?
Yeah. So one of the things I'm trying my best to do now. So if there's one lesson I learned in the last year with the stock market is that I need to I'm going to remain a very strong bull on the story, but I'm going to try my best to temper my expectations. And so even though my math says Tesla could do more than 2 million cars in 2023, I'm not going to allow myself to say it can until it does it. And then so once I have that conviction reconfirmed by the company itself, then I'll say, okay, cool, we're going to get there. And I'm not talking about them mis-executing, but I'm talking about them reaching my lofty expectations, right? So I'm going to say in 2023, the point you made is exactly the one that's how I'm thinking about it. In Q4, Tesla produced 440,000 cars in a single quarter. Doesn't include, like you said, a ramped Berlin or ramped Austin. And so if they just do that 4 times, it's basically 1.74 million cars, basically 1.8. And they don't have to do anything. They just keep doing what they're doing and make sure you have a price on the vehicle where you can drum up enough demand to produce 440 and sell 440. It's that simple. So any additional unit volume from that is what what you call gravy, which is exactly how I'm looking at it. Now, Berlin and Austin still have a lot of room to grow, especially Austin. And as you think about the EV tax credit in the United States, especially, so they fixed it today where all actual SUVs are able to get the tax credit. This has opened up the Model Y specifically to be eligible for a $7,500 tax credit across every single trim with any options whatsoever. So you can buy a fully loaded Tesla Model Y Performance with red paint, a tow hitch, and full self-driving for $76,000, and you can still get a $7,500 tax credit. Whereas before, anything about $55,000, you wouldn't be able to get a tax credit. So it's opened up this gigantic amount of demand for the vehicle. And so I think with that alone, it's going to put a lot of pressure on Austin to get ramped as quickly as humanly possible ahead of the Cybertruck launch. And so it becomes an equation of are they constrained from a production perspective? Are they constrained from a supply perspective? I haven't seen a lot of proof that they've figured out their 4680 ramp yet, which is their sort of their battery manufacturing, their internal one. They're making about 1,000 cars per week equivalent, but I need to see proof that they're able to get to say 5,000 or 10,000 cars per week equivalent of 4680 cells. So it becomes a question of production constraint. But the demand, it will always be there. Like that's how I view the story. The demand will always be there. It's just a question of how much can Tesla crank up their production by, and do they have pricing power to ensure that they're able to sell into the market at the right price, which I know they have because they've proved it in the past, and they've proved it very recently as well with the recent price drop. So that's how I think about it. So between 1.8 to 2 million in 2023, I think is a realistic target. And if it's above 2 million, then I become confident that they're ramping faster than most people expect.
And double clicking into the 4680 news, because in the Q3 earnings call, I remember the CFO saying batteries are no longer a gating factor. They were no longer battery constraint. Now it appears a lot of people saying, oh, well, there's some gremlins in the 4680 production, etc. Do you still have any contacts back at Tesla to give you the inside baseball on where that is right now?
Mm-hmm. I don't, and even if I did, I couldn't say anything. Haha, you'd have to kill me. No, I think that's for me, it's how much demand is there out there for the cars, and I do really think Tesla has unlimited demand as long as they have pricing power, and they do. So for me, it's like, yeah, they have all the battery cells they need back then at their current demand, but do they have enough battery cells to get to 2 million cars per year plus a ramping Megapack, right? And they just released some stats around that today on Twitter that indicate where they're going to be this year from a production perspective. So we'll see. We need to see more. I'm hoping Investor Day gives us a better outlook. But the overall story is that Tesla will grow at least 40% year over year, and then once they hit the compact car, they're going to be growing. I don't know, probably significantly more than that, at least for a few years' time, and it's going to generate a lot of profit for the company.
I agree. You hit on Cybertruck there for a second. This is the most fascinating thing. I went on the list very early on, and I must say,
me too.
I'm a person who's never owned a pickup truck in his life, ever.
Me too.
So it'll be my first. But I'm very excited, and especially with all the buzz around these things are rolling around Palo Alto right now and stuff. In terms of where we are with that vehicle, how long do you think it'll take them to ramp? Because there was rumors that Elon Musk believes he could do 200,000 from the time they start production. So that would mean starting, say, August or July 2023. Within a year, they can make 200,000 of these things. Now, the reason I mention this is because should they, like strategically, put their focus on the Cybertruck, because they can sell those things for 6 digits all day long for years based on demand. I think, I can't remember the numbers. You know the numbers better than anybody. But in the US, over 2 million pickup trucks are sold every year.
Somewhere around that number. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
correct.
And they are not sophisticated cars by no stretch of the imagination. I remember seeing a TV commercial. This cracks me up. It was General Motors, and they had a full 60-minute TV commercial showcasing how the back door of a pickup truck could turn into a step. That was the ad.
Yeah. Innovation, baby.
That's 2022 innovation. I was like scratching my head. It's like, what are these guys thinking? General Motors, I know you're a big fan. And you have a big bag. I'm kidding. No, your stuff about those guys are hilarious, and too many people are poking fun. But would you, if you were sitting in Austin right now, would you switch production effort to this truck that you can sell unlimited for the next 5 years plus at any price?
No, I think so. The key thing here to remember with Tesla is that their core motive isn't really to generate large amount of profit. It's to advance the advent of sustainable transport, and they do that by maximizing the number of units they can crank out every single year. And so I think the proper approach, I mean, if I'm part of the production team, I'm continuing to ramp up Model Y demand so that I can hit. Uh, I can find the number. Like if I want to have 20, 25%, 30% margin on the vehicle, whatever that number is, and you keep dropping costs, then that means you can continue to drop price, which will open up more and more demand for the vehicle. But it's going to be capped at some point. There's only going to be X number of people that are going to want to buy a Model Y. So if that's 3 million vehicles a year, 2 million vehicles a year, whatever that number is, 1 million vehicles a year, make sure you're investing as much effort as possible to do that. And then whatever surplus bandwidth you have, you move it to the Cybertruck to ensure that ramp gets put through. Now, the big thing here, though, is that people have been waiting for a long time. This thing got unveiled uh, 3 years ago, right? So we have to get this thing out on the streets now. So I think there's already been show of a significant amount of effort put forth to get the Cybertruck out on the roads and out to customers as quickly as humanly possible. But I wouldn't really divert bandwidth away from other cars. I would keep them where they are, continue to ramp them, and then get the Cybertruck out as quickly as humanly possible and hit those production targets of, I think Elon openly said 250,000 units per year, but I think it's way more. I think it's going to be way more. It's going to have to be.
Dude, does Tesla, in your opinion, have an Achilles heel that could impact it in the future?
Yeah, I think there's a few. I mean, Tesla's not a perfect company. I think the Achilles heels. I mean, I wouldn't say it's an Achilles heel, but there are risks. I think short term, some of the China stuff could be a potential risk. I don't think it's truly that high. Maybe 10% chance that the Chinese government, severs ties with Tesla because of U.S. relations. But I don't really see that happening because I think Tesla is way too additive to the Chinese economy. It's too big of a player, and Elon has outwardly showed respect for that team over there and their the way they do things in their own way. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think key man risk exists to some respect. I do think Elon is, he's not the whole company, but the culture he sets and sort of the vision that he has and how he's viewed by the workforce and the fans and everything, I think means something, and that really I think speaks to just the talent that he has and who he is as an individual in society with his sort of how he can run businesses and how he can inspire people. So I think from that respect, there is some key man risk for sure. But I the longer he's at the company, the less that key man risk is because more of the cultures more of the culture soaks up the Elon Muskness, call it. Like it becomes more and more embedded in the culture and the individuals there. It's 120,000 person company. So in the end, Elon's doing a very small percentage, like an insignificant amount of work on a daily basis, but he is an important figure to really continue pushing the future forward. I think, yeah, go ahead.
By the way, I think you just named the new fragrance from Elon Musk. It's called Elon Muskness after burnt hair. That's so good.
Elon Muskness.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Um,
Copyright, trademark. Just kidding.
yeah,
Yeah, but I think that Elon Musk is a key man risk for sure. But I think it's more because he is just such a unique figure. But if say he were to disappear, like say the aliens abduct him and he disappears forever, I still think Tesla's fine. But he probably doesn't get the valuation. The company doesn't get the valuation it has now because I think Elon is an important figure for the future. But the more we go into the future, the less risky that becomes, to the point that it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy to a point.
yeah,
Yeah.
I must say, he's definitely an impressive character. Somebody who sleeps on a factory floor for 3 years, who is also richest man on earth. People can't wrap their head around that, but I have utmost respect for it. But in terms of some of the stuff, Twitter, there was a very interesting tweet I think you put out yesterday too about the popularity between the left and the right of Twitter. It's now equal
Oh
between
yeah.
Democrats and Republicans. I thought that was interesting. So I believe that balance, like you, is actually a very, very good thing for the world. I think everything needs to have balance. But also doing things like providing Starlink to Ukraine has made them unpopular with Russians, bringing up a lot of this risk. But at the same time, when I look at the potential synergy, you know, Elon Musk has 130 million followers. He is an idol of many around the earth, and of course, many people hate him too, including government officials. But do you believe there's a synergy between Twitter and Tesla to be,
Oh yeah.
additive somehow?
For sure. I mean, I think there was a stat that was shown that the amount of tweets that were liked or viewed that had Tesla content on Twitter, my God, it was like in the hundreds of millions or something.
Mm.
And that I think in itself speaks to the visibility that Twitter has worldwide. They started counting the views for tweets as well. They started putting a view counter, and it was shocking to me how many people view tweets. My
Yeah,
tweets are getting tens of thousands of views,
I know it's great.
individual tweets.
Yeah.
I'm like, why? I'm like, I just speak a bunch of crap every day. Why would anybody want to read my Twitter? But I'm grateful that they are. So that's very eye opening to me. So bringing to light, or bringing forward what Tesla does on a daily basis, I think that's where Twitter is a very powerful tool, because I do believe mainstream media, especially in the United States, I don't know how it is around the world, but in the United States, the mainstream media tends to very unfairly cover Tesla, where they purely focus on the negatives and what the perceived negatives, not even the negatives, the perceived negatives, and they never are a tool to bring forward the positives of the story, because Tesla doesn't advertise. They don't advertise. So every second on a TV or on a newspaper that you view, the publication has zero incentive to write something positively, because we know as creators, the things that drive a lot of the clicks is not positive, is negative. Like, it's just a human thing that you're like, oh my God, something exploded. Oh my God, there's a fire. Oh my God, somebody fell off a cliff, right? So that's how, I don't know, that's how our current media landscape works. So I think that's where Twitter can come in and really level the playing field, where you don't have this uneven thing where it's constant negative attention. And now Twitter can be like, okay, it's positive and negative. It's both. You can have both. And the bigger Twitter becomes, and the bigger it becomes a player in the consciousness of human beings from the standpoint of absorbing media and news, that only benefits Tesla, because it has gotten zero positive attention in most media publications over time. So that's a net positive to me in my eyes, 1,000 times over, for sure.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about government for a minute, because it's been pretty clear the tension between the left, Biden's cabinet, etc., and Elon Musk. But getting back to some recent stuff that happened, and it was, of course, picked up by the mainstream media. Mercedes got approval for level 3 driving or something. And of course, if you read the fine print, it's only on a freeway with traffic up to 40 miles an hour, which is completely useless. It's probably an edge case and 5% of your driving. But how do you view the way government panders to government motors and other players, and they just hate Elon? And do you think if DeSantis gets into office in a year or two, could that all change?
I think that's a very interesting point. It's bothersome. I mean, when this now world famous clip of Biden telling Mary Barra that she led the EV revolution, and
Yeah.
she matters, you know? She's poor Mary has become a laughing stock of the Tesla community. I'm sure Mary is a wonderful person, wonderful, woman, parent, friend, great human being, but she's a laughing stock of some circles because of the very improper way of the way that Biden sort of in the Biden administration views General Motors. You know, I think that's messed up. That I think that's sort of like a kick in the face to all Tesla employees and everybody who has worked their ass off at that company to move the EV revolution forward, and then you're giving the blame to somebody else as the president of the United States.
Yeah.
That's super super weird. But we all know that it's because the Biden administration has very close ties to the UAW, which is the United Auto Workers Union, and they're a big lobbyist group. Biden is a huge lobby guy. We're going back to the days, and I'm not saying lobbies, or sorry, a union guy back in the day, and I'm not saying unions are good or bad. Just saying that's who he is. And GM and Ford and I believe Stellantis employ their factory workers are unionized through the United Auto Workers Union, so they have an incentive to be nice to GM and Ford, and they don't have to be nice to anybody else. And because Tesla is their direct competitor to GM and Ford, there might be a situation where, GM and Ford are okay with the president, pooping on Tesla and being happy with GM and Ford. So it's just weird. But I do think as Elon becomes more influential and more, quote unquote, powerful, and now that he has a media company that could, I don't know, bring a lot of more fairness and more open dialogue on a lot of things. I expect the tone to shift quite a bit, especially as Twitter becomes a way for a lot of people to make a lot of money. And I think once that happens, it will change quite a bit. And you've seen Elon, he visited the White House last week to talk to the Biden administration about the EV tax credit and all that stuff, which I really think is why it changed today, which is great news. So I do think there's going to be a tone shift. It's up to Elon though how he decides to be part of that public forum and how he decides to drive the conversation, because he does have a huge platform, and if he thinks the Biden administration is being messed up, he will openly say like you're messing screwing me over, so he might get attacked a certain way during the presidential election. But it's fascinating to see. It's really fascinating to see. It's changing though. I can feel it changing. There's a
Yeah.
change.
Good. As I always say, logic ultimately floats to the top, or
One
fundamentals.
would hope.
Yeah. So getting back to FSD and the political nature of this beast, what do you see as the biggest obstacle for Tesla to achieve full FSD? I've been a beta user for a long time. I'm sure you probably are as well.
Yep.
Every time I get an upgrade download, I see little things that it does so much better, and it's stunning to me. And we're close. We're probably somewhere between 92 and 95% of the way there for
Yep.
most driving. Of course, there'll always be those edge cases. But the question is, somebody said, maybe it was you or something, but Tesla FSD is safer than a teenage driver. Did you read that somewhere?
Yeah. I
I read it. It's
yeah,
like
I'd read it somewhere. I forget who said it. Yeah.
the propensity to have an accident is more with a teenage driver than Tesla FSD. So that's a big step right there. So you can take people who
Yeah.
are 75, 80 years of age who can't see or can't drive very well. It's probably better than those guys too. But do you see any obstacles to FSD, and when do you believe it could happen, and when will robotaxis become a reality? Although they already are with Waymo, etc., in very special conditions.
Yeah, I think. By the way, I think it was Omar from Homar's catalog that said that, if I remember correctly. That
Yeah,
little comment about
yeah,
it being
right.
safer. So shout out Omar. Great account, great Twitter account if you want to follow him. Um, so the way I think about this is it's going to have to be based on what regulators are comfortable with. So right now there are trials of Waymos and all these other car companies where they don't have a lot of data set that proves that they have a safe car, but the jurisdictions allow those cars to operate within a geofenced area as a trial to gather that data. But Tesla is doing it differently. Tesla is gathering the data as we speak, and they're using the fleet to drive the collection of that data. So it's going to come down to two things. One is, what is the safety level that regulators are going to ask for this technology to be turned on in a usable area? I'm not talking about geofence areas, but where I can hail a self-driving car from my house and it take me to Austin Airport, and I don't have to worry about geofence areas or anything. And then, so what's the safety requirement there, and how quickly will Tesla reach that? So I do believe the government has an incentive to ensure that the safety level of this thing is can remove the chance of death as much as humanly possible. Because you know, a 2 times improvement is great, but it's still too big. So in my gut, what it tells me is that the government regulators are probably going to ask for 1/10 of fatalities, or 1/50th of fatalities, or 1/100th of the fatalities with a vehicle, autonomous vehicle, versus one that drives itself. Maybe they want something comparable to the airline model, right? Like people die on airplanes, but it's like barely anybody if you look at the total thing. So what is that number going to be? And then the second one is, how far away is Tesla from achieving that? The thing to keep in mind with Tesla full self driving is that it's a compounding exponential improvement. It's not linear; it's exponential. Because not only is their neural nets getting better, especially when they put Dojo in place and everything, but their data gathering prowess is also increasing exponentially, because every single car they add to the fleet is a data gathering tool. So the 2 million cars they're going to add to the fleet this year, every single one of those is going to gather data for full self driving to get better. So you're getting more data and better computational power. Now, these things are going to be more difficult to solve because they are those increasingly weird edge cases. But at some point, the edge case that you reach that matches up with 1/100th of a case of injury or death versus a regular driver exists somewhere. It's just they have to find where that is. Realistically speaking, they'll probably start geofence, to be honest, but they'll make the geofence area like usable, like maybe a 50-mile radius around the downtown area of Austin or something like that, and they
Yeah.
can use that as a geofenced area. And then they'll have that on for 2 years or a year, and then once they prove that they're safer than what the regulators are expecting them to be, then they flip the switch for the entire country, and then boom, or the entire state, and then we move on. And different states will do it differently. I think Texas, Florida, maybe California, and areas will go fastest, and then you'll have the more like smaller states or states that are more hesitant will go slower.
Excellent. That's a very interesting angle. Especially, I think different states will allow things. Place like Nevada, etc. Probably the easiest place to get approval. Maybe Texas second, etc. And then San
Yeah,
Francisco last, or California last. Uh,
something. Yeah, Orlando, Miami would be great places for this.
yeah, and I know they're going to launch that maybe robo taxi service near the tunnel in Vegas too, as a plan.
Yep.
It'll be a place to dip the toe in the water. Let's talk about legacy ice for a second. What would be the next closest traditional OEM advice for how to catch up with Tesla, or should they just give up and focus on something else?
Oh man, I know if I say how I really feel, I'm gonna get made fun of. But so
Do it.
I'm gonna try to be as nice as possible. I know, right? I do it. I get hate already. Might as well, you know.
Yeah, someone
Um,
made fun of you actually on Twitter. I think they must have been a GM or Ford fan, but they were out for blood. But
yeah,
it was weird.
great. Thank you. I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think it's important. Here's the deal: I don't want any legacy automaker to fail. I really don't. I want every single one of them to succeed, because if they fail, that means a lot of people lost their jobs, and that sucks. Truly don't want that. So what it has to come down to is, um, do legacy automakers have the correct production, like do they have the production capacity built in to be able to sell into the new cycle of automotive, which is electric vehicles? And if I look at the legacy automakers that are closest to Tesla, the one that I would argue is the closest is Ford. And Ford right now, and GM, to a respect, with their Bolt, right? So GM sells about 100,000 bolts per year and like 100 Hummer EVs per year, and they make zero money on those cars. Ford sells 50,000 Mach-E's per year right now, and about 10,000 Lightnings per year. That's 60,000 units. Tesla's selling 1.3 million units per year, and they're going to get to 2 million units per year. So the question becomes, how quickly can the leaders in legacy auto in Ford and GM from electrification ramp up their efforts, in Volkswagen as well? They're doing about 500,000 per year, so props to them. How quickly can they get up to the 10 million a unit number, or the 5 million a unit number, without going bankrupt? Because they have all these companies. GM has $100 billion of long-term debt that is tied to the ICE business. Ford has $90 billion of debt that is tied to the ICE business. Volkswagen has $200 billion of debt that is tied to the ICE business. Not to mention the machinery they have, all the factory spaces they have. Everything they've invested in their company is in gas automotive. And if there's going to be a shift to the electric vehicle, I would argue a lot of these assets and debt that they have are going to depreciate in value so much over time because no one's going to want them, right? It becomes a use. It's like becomes like a VHS tape or like a cassette tape. The utility is gone, especially if the electric vehicle can drive itself. So unless they can come up with a way to magically make that debt go away, or they get bailed out by government to the level that they're just like rescued from this and they're allowed to build as fast as they humanly can to that sort of top line electric vehicle production rate that they need to achieve to become profitable, then unless they are able to do that, they're gone. And what my gut tells me is, especially in the case of Ford and GM and maybe Stellantis, is that I think because of the UAW, I really do think they get bailed out by the US government. I don't think they have a clean transition over. I think there's going to be some governmental assistance. Ford might be able to figure it out, but I think they'll be a shell of their former self. They won't be like a 4 million unit a year manufacturer. They'll be like 2 million or 1.5 million. And maybe they can grow further into that. But by that point, Tesla will be at 15 million, 20 million, and they become an insignificant player in that respect. They become a shell of their former selves,
Well,
if not outright bankruptcy.
well, that's the good thing about the U.S. government because they have this money printer, and they have between unfunded and funded liabilities, $212.5 trillion worth. So throw a few more trillion on it, it'd be fine.
For
And
real.
General Motors, I heard last week, have decided to invest $900 million in V8 engines. I mean, in this
Great.
day and age, those types of inefficient machines, is the plan there to just burn through oil faster so we can transition to EVs? Or I don't know what their end game is. It's like weird stuff happens in the world, and I can't wrap my head around it. But I'm not smart enough to understand all of this stuff. So
Yeah, man. I mean, I think what it is, it's a lack of innovators at the company, right? These are MBAs, and I mean they're smart in their own right, but they're smart in maximizing what they have. They're not they don't necessarily have vision into the future, into what the future needs or wants. And so that's the kind of investments you get. We're going to make our V8s better. Cool. Literally no one cares.
yeah.
See what happens. We'll see what happens.
Well, it's pretty clear. I've looked at some numbers for Lucid, and I know they've got a big money pit that keeps them alive. But do you think they're going to make it? Do you think Rivian is going to make it? Rivian has Jeff Bezos and company, and they have
Yeah.
a unique product, and they went after trucks first because Americans like trucks. But still, the price point is quite high. What do you think of those two brands?
I think Lucid makes it because they have infinite money through the Saudi fund.
Yep.
You know, they're owned by the Saudis, and the Saudis have infinite money basically.
Yeah.
So they'll keep that thing alive forever because the luxury car market in that part of the world is huge. And even though they have a factory in Arizona, I wouldn't be surprised if the Lucid is kept alive as as like a niche player, right? They're going to be like a Maserati quasi Rolls Royce type thing over time. I don't think they're going to be mass market. They're going to be very niche. Um, Rivian, I want them to succeed so bad because their pickup truck is sick. I think the Rivian R1S is dope. It's a dope vehicle.
Mm.
However, they lose so much money. They lose so much money. They only have so much runway. So what
Yeah.
I hope happens is that Rivian figures out how to get their production so that they stop losing money and they move forward. And if that doesn't happen, I think they're taken private. I think somebody steps in, they take the company private, and they sort of figure out how to make this thing sustainable over time. They'll throw money at it until it's fixed. They might enter into a partnership with Tesla, maybe to leverage their battery supply chain, their drivetrain supply chain, maybe leverage some of their talent, leverage their charging network, make it as appealable as humanly possible, fix it right up, and then make it go public again in maybe 5, 10 years or something. So I want them to succeed. I want these EV players, these pure EV players to succeed because they're built from the ground up to make EVs. And the more EVs we have, the better, because that is the better technology to move transportation forward. So any efforts we can to make that happen, I'm for. I don't want any of these car companies to die. Will they survive is a completely different question, especially in a place where monetary policy is more tight. It's going to be tougher to find that cash, or more expensive at least. So your rate of return has to be nuts, and hopefully these companies can figure out how to do that.
That's great input. And I know we've gone over an hour already, and I appreciate your time, but I got a couple more
Of
topics
course.
to hit. And I know you're no stranger to 90-minute long interviews.
No, dude. Let's go.
Cool, there you go. Let's talk energy for a second. And it's more about dispelling FUD, talking about ESG stuff, etc. So I'll tackle the grid. You take a place like California that I know and love, but it's going down the tubes because of mismanagement. Good on you, Mr. Newsom. But they can't keep the lights on, and literally, the place where I live, the poles that hold the electric wires up are rotting out and falling over, and causing fires and all sorts of crazy stuff. But a lot of people believe that the US grid will not be able to handle the electrification. What's your take on that, real quick?
I mean, if it doesn't, then it will. I mean, it's supply and demand, y'all. Like,
Yeah.
if there are enough EV vehicles out in the market and people want them, somebody will step in and figure out how to make the electric grid work. It's a solvable issue. It's not this like insane thing we can't solve. Just figure it out, fix it. It's not that big of a deal. Like, I never bought that. If anything, it's good for the economy because it incentivizes job creation about updating our horrific electric grid. It's a joke. Like, I was just in, 2 days ago, yesterday, I lost power. I'm in Texas. I live in the Austin suburbs. We lost power for 3 hours because we had ice for a day. What the hell is that? Like, that shouldn't be happening. We live in a first world country. We live in the richest country on earth with the most talent and the most know-how. And an ice storm knocks out power. It shouldn't be happening, I would argue, in 2023.
And the
So
and the state with the most renewables too.
exactly, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy. It shouldn't be happening. So yeah, the grid is crap, but we can fix it. And if there's a forcing function to fix it, you actually create an incentive economically to fix it. You give people the ability to step in and figure out these things. So like things like battery storage and localized battery management or battery storage, solar power. You ramp that up. You ramp up your wind. I don't know. You just ramp up different ways to upgrade the grid. Great. And then over time, we'll have a much better grid, and then we'll make a transition to electric vehicles. Great. I would rather much do that than be in regions that are volatile, digging up freaking oil from the ground and potentially go into war in regions because we need more of it. That is insane. I'd rather fix up the grid and leverage the renewable sources we have locally and store them in batteries and utilize the freaking nuclear power plant in the sky,
Yeah.
grab the sun rays and store them into a battery and use that instead. Why is that such a crazy idea? We should be working towards that.
In fact, that triggers something. I think Elon Musk once said is one of his goals is to drive the cost of energy to zero. I think Shamas said the same thing as well.
Yeah.
But think about. I wish I could get a solar roof and a power wall, but the line is too long to wait almost, and
Yeah.
charge my car with that. But how far are we away from that at scale? And then passing energy back to the traditional grids that need it because they can't keep the lights on. Because that is a beautiful vision, but two of
Yeah.
the parts are very hard to scale.
It's going to take time for sure.
Yeah.
It's going to take a long, long time. But it speaks to the again, if we circle back to some of the initial conversations we had about Tesla's exponential growth, there's basically unlimited demand for this grid upgrade because you think about the insanity that we have to work through to get this going. But if batteries are a core component of that upgraded grid, who is the company that makes the cheapest, best battery per kilowatt hour on planet Earth? Tesla. You don't think they're going to benefit from this? Don't you think they have a role to play?
Yeah. In fact,
you know,
on that
it's
note, a lot of people say Tesla is behind on batteries because they misunderstand some of the FUD that, oh no, LG or some Korean manufacturer makes them better. Panasonic out of Japan. Like, what's your take on their battery technology? It clearly is far ahead of everybody else. But again, is that just more FUD
yeah.
out there?
Okay, so who has the best range per mile? Who has the best watt hour per mile?
Tesla.
Okay, that's it. We're done.
That's true. Okay. Let's skip that one. Let's talk about lithium supplies and next generation batteries. And could you spend a second dispelling some of the cobalt FUD? I know that less than 50% of the batteries now use cobalt and they're getting away from it entirely. But what's your stance on lithium right now for the next 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think Elon Musk has very openly said that lithium is extremely plentiful. It's just the refining process is really the bottleneck here. So again, that's another industry that that will rise and get developed as the advent of EVs continues to dominate where we're going as a transportation industry. So I don't see it as a shortage problem at all. I just, again, it becomes a uh, we need to ramp up refining. There will be short term hiccups here because we need to ramp up that production. So you might be capped at in certain years to how many batteries you can produce, but over time you'll be fine. A great channel to follow. I highly recommend everybody to follow, if you don't follow him already. Jordan Gisigi at the Limiting Factor. He does deep dives into the state of the battery technology across every single vehicle maker and company and the raw material sources. And he is such a good resource. The Limiting Factor by Jordan Gisigi. Everybody should go subscribe to him. Seriously, some of the best content out there on YouTube. On the Cobalt front, I think the cobalt stuff for me is a little bit more legitimate because if you do think about where cobalt comes from,
Yep.
boy does it's freaking dark, man. Like it comes from the deepest, darkest nook and crannies of the Congo. And I've seen footage and all this stuff of how it gets dug up. It's a problem. However, as long as we are taking steps to move away from that, that's all we can do right now, and we're in this unfortunate place as a first world society, Western society, that this stupid thing was technically made in part by having people in horrific conditions. But our society can't function unless we have those things, our current society, otherwise our economy collapses, right? So what we need to do as a society is move away from that as quickly as humanly possible. In the case of Tesla, I know yeah, like you said, more than half of their batteries don't use cobalt, and they're shifting quickly away from that as quickly as humanly possible, and they're going to figure out how to source it on their own as well. But the best thing here is to continue moving away from that source as much as possible, or figure out how to do it so that you can do so in a much more humane manner, because it is a problem. And anybody who makes batteries has some sort of responsibility to either fix the issue or move away from it as quickly as possible. And I'm thankful that Tesla is one of the few companies that's really truly doing something about it.
Good. That's really interesting and related to battery technology and IP and patents. You being a former Tesla employee, I believe the world is changing so fast that patents are becoming very redundant very quickly because of the time to file. And then basically you share the blueprint for people to copy anyway. They just need to tweak it ever so slightly. What's your take on patents per se and the protection of all the moats that actually Tesla have today? And
I do think
this is a tweet, by the way. I responded to one of your tweets earlier with my moats. You were saying, does Tesla have a moat? Yes and no. 70% think they don't. Many think they don't, or do. Many think they don't. But I just put together a short list for you here as to what those moats are. What's your take on patents, IP? Because a lot of people are concerned, he shares all the IP and patents, or he doesn't even patent stuff. And that means competition will come.
Great. Okay. Great. What is the best forcing function for a company to get better over time? Competition, right? Yeah. It's so what this really is, and not to say that Tesla doesn't share all IP, is that Tesla does have some IP and patents on like the most core components of their business, right? They've made the initial like all our patents belong to you kind of thing was, I think, a little bit of a marketing campaign back in the day, because even like the ones that they really, really, really want to hold dear, they don't release because there is a secret sauce in the 4680 manufacturing process. There's a secret sauce in how they built Dojo, and their computer that they're going to use to the neural net to really make full self-driving work over time, and all the processing power and stuff. They have some patents around manufacturing of drivetrains and stuff like that. But everything else they've opened up, and I think the message there is, listen, y'all can have it because we need to move towards a sustainable future where we have EVs in the world as much as humanly possible, so we can move away from digging oil from the ground and doing this weird experiment that we're doing with putting fumes into the atmosphere. Plus, it's cheaper. It's just lower cost to run. It's just better for the economy. Period. It's more efficient. So here you go. Help us move forward. And then the way Elon Musk runs his business is that the way he cultivates the talent and the culture is that regardless of what anybody else is doing, we're going to go faster because we need to move as fast as humanly possible to make this happen. And if the surroundings, if the other companies have that quote unquote technology to catch up to Tesla. All they quote unquote need to do is do the work. But doing the work is 99.99999% of what it takes to have a successful business. Anybody who has run a business or has been in a corporation or everything, you know, when you're surrounded by people that are not passionate and being there, it's a drag. You can't get anything done.
Yeah.
It's awful. It's literally, it's just, it feels like the worst 8 hours of your life, because you're like, oh my god, I have to go to work. Whereas in a company like Tesla, from my experience, was like, dude, I'm here to move the company forward. I'm here to change the future, change the world. And if you have companies that are trying to come behind your butt and try to nip it and get in front of you, that gives you more motivation to do it. And what's crazy to think about, again, I worked at Tesla. I've been following the company for 10 years. I am as biased as they come when it comes to the story. I try to view it from a very like a logical sense. But I do want to be clear in saying that I might be biased and I don't know it. But I do know it, that I'm biased, because I really like the company. I don't dislike it. I really like it. But Tesla has operated from a standpoint of no competition for this entire time, and they created this incredible lead since then. What happens when you have that culture and that workforce when they finally have competition? If that ever actually materializes, don't you think that workforce is going to be more motivated to go in even faster? Of
Mm.
course they are. That's how that culture is sort of pushed forward and bred in the company. So it's a great thing. And as a business leader, like if you're a business leader that is afraid about competitors, I don't think you have the right mindset. Their mindset should be, how can I be better than everybody else, and how can I make everybody else better so even I can get better?
Yeah.
Instead of being like, no, it's mine. It's mine. I'm going to keep it to myself. It's fear. It's fear. It's anxiety, and it's not conducive to moving the society forward ultimately.
It even goes beyond that too. If you look at the stuff that Volkswagen tried to do with Dietz, I think was his name. He
These,
tried
yeah.
that, hey, we have a serious threat here. We're going to be dead in 5 to 8 years unless we change fast. And they flick him out. They weren't willing to change. So there's a part of
Crazy.
the, like legacy bloat, the refusal to change, whether it's controlled by unions or equipment or people protecting their jobs or nobody really having the gumption to drive things forward. Like I remember they got Shanghai up and running, and then within a year and a half, stop it, redo the whole production line and make it better. And now they got Project Highland coming. Highland, I can't remember, the Gen 2 platform. Investor Day, March 1st is coming in a couple of weeks. That's going to be fascinating. What's your take on that? So they're going to take what's already smashing the competition and make it radically better?
Right.
How is that
Yeah. I
possible?
mean, that's how Tesla works. That's how
Yeah.
Tesla works. That's what they do.
Yeah.
That's just the culture of the company. They don't wait for other people. They are constantly improving, and that's the Elon Musk factor that is so impressive about Tesla, is that entire workforce is bought into that mission about just constant improvement. They are the largest startup in the world. That is how I would describe them, and I've heard other people talk about it that way, but that's what rings most true to me. Anybody who has ever built like a startup or has been part of a startup, what sort of environment you're in, where everybody around you is a freaking rock star, and you're all like super complimentary to each other, and you're not afraid to like have arguments about how to get stuff done because you both care so passionately about getting stuff done for the company. Tesla is like that at 120,000 people. This is like what's mind-blowing about that business. And so I'm sorry, what was your question? I completely blanked on your question.
Basically, the next gen Highland platform,
Oh
how they're
yeah, sorry.
radically better. Um,
I'm like, sometimes you ever watch the episode from The Office, Michael Scott, he says, sometimes I start talking with the hopes that I find something, and that I just found myself in that position. Shout out Michael Scott in The Office. But Project Highland, I think, is going to be purely I think they're going to try to get the Model 3 to be basically similar to the Model Y from a chassis perspective. Because you think about the Model 3, what is it? It was launched in 2016, 2017-ish, around that time, and it was their first true mass market vehicle that was filled with imperfections. Sandy Monroe from Monroe Live, another channel I highly recommend if you don't follow.
I love him.
Monroe Live, he's
Yeah.
great. Him and Corey are phenomenal resources. So Jordan from a battery perspective, Sandy and Corey from Monroe Live for engineering. If you really want to learn about the engineering of electric vehicles, not just Teslas, every electric vehicle, go follow them. Sandy
I,
Monroe, he's
I'll
been
make sure
go ahead.
I will add those links as well as Farzad's
Good.
Twitter and YouTube. So make sure everybody here subscribes to that. If you're interested in all things disruption in Tesla, and probably, in my opinion, the biggest asymmetric bet of the next 10 years, would you agree with that? Well, you're 100%
100%.
Tesla, so you must, yeah. So 100% is like
Yeah.
slam dunk
It
as
would be
far as
funny
I'm
if I'm
concerned.
like, no.
No, get off the
Yeah.
channel. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
get off the train. But yeah, it's just going to be that. It's going to be an improvement, single piece casting on the front and rear, maybe a structural battery pack, and just getting that platform up to where every other car they make is with the Model Y, the Model S, and X with the refresh and stuff. So the Model 3 is really the laggard, and that's going to create better differentiation between the Model Y and 3 as well, in
and you,
preparation for that compact car.
and then Model 2, as I call it, which will be their $20,000, $25,000 car. But technically, with the credits, if they streamline the Model 3, that could become a $25,000 car, theoretically. Or no?
Um, I don't know how much cost there is to take out from the Model 3. My estimations, and this is just me pulling something out of my butt. The Model 3, they can probably take out another, man, maybe $3,000 to $4,000 in cost, maybe, if they're super diligent, just because of you have a production line, and a lot of that machinery is going to be static, and you could take stuff out, but you still have a paint shop, you still have general assembly, you still have the pieces that go into the car, the harnesses, the way you've designed them. So there is room to. I mean, you can probably improve, probably like 1,000 basis points or something on margin, maybe 800 basis points or something, which is significant. It's not small, just for that model. But I don't think it gets down to $25,000. What's interesting though is, if you really think about it, the Model 3 starts at 43 MSRP with the $7,500 tax credit. It gets it down to, call it, 36, 37, and then in places like Oregon, there's another $7,500 state tax incentive. So if you buy a Model 3 in Oregon, you can buy it for $30,000 out the door. That's completely mind blowing. But I think the smaller car, Tesla openly said that they're looking to reduce costs by 50%, which implies, which means kind of that if you take the Model 3 at 43 and you shave 50% off of it, theoretically, Tesla now has a compact car that's
Yeah,
half the price of a Model 3. That
exactly.
seems like a good deal, a $22,000 Tesla. But again, I don't,
Well,
if Tesla can offer a $22,000 car, the demand for that is completely ridiculous. It makes no sense. And so there's no way it stays at 22,000 forever, at least to start. So, but who knows? I'm just speculating here, right? We got to wait and see what they say on Investor Day on 3/1, but we'll
it'll
see.
be exciting. And only three questions left, and then I'll let you go. I know it's late your time in Texas,
Perfect.
but people ask me in the community, you know, how was your experience as a Tesla employee? What was it
Yeah.
like to work there? And how has it impacted your life? Now you're out on your own doing this. If you could just summarize that real quick for the audience, they want to know,
Yeah.
do you have a Tesla tattoo on you or DNA or something, blood transfusion?
I should.
Uh,
I am I've been following the company for so long. I first invested in the company in
you
2012,
you
December
were
5th,
inside it
2012.
though. You were inside the company before you invested, correct, or after?
No, after. Yeah,
After.
I was an investor first. So I invested in 2012. December 5th, 2012 was the first time I invested in the company. I've been a fan for a really long time. I joined the company in, what was it, July of 2017, and I was there up through September of 2021. I was on the supply chain side, so I was in a parts distribution, and essentially by title I was a program manager when I left. But in reality, what my role was to make the distribution network as efficient as humanly possible. And so I helped launch distribution centers. I helped with outbound processes, inbound processes, dashboard creation, analytics, KPIs, managing, freaking working with suppliers, getting costs down for everything that touches any of our parts. So really anything, anything related to making the distribution network as efficient as humanly possible in the United States. I did some work in Europe as well, and in Asia as well, a little bit, not too much, but mostly it was like the US and some in Europe. So that was a lot of my role. And it was by far my favorite job of all time. And it was by far the hardest job of my life, easily, easily. But I wouldn't change anything for the world. I really wouldn't, because it taught me so many lessons from a, like, surviving in a moment where it seems like every odd is against you, but you still figure out how to make something work. was unbelievable. And the way Tesla works is, and I've heard the story from other Tesla employees as well. And it's like, you they expect you to build a spaceship, but you only have sticks and stones to make the spaceship, but you still figure out how to make it work. And what the lesson I learned from that is that you need a lot less than you think to make something happen. You don't need all these extra bells and whistles to get to where you need to go. Just think about it from a first principle standpoint. What is the end goal here? Like, what am I trying to build? Try to identify the core components of that thing, and then just start going towards there, and then keep failing as you go there, keep tripping, keep falling over, but still move forward as fast as humanly possible. And then when you have an entire company that's where a huge majority of the staff is of that same mentality, you have magic. You have magic. And that was my time at Tesla. And it was also 80-hour, 100-hour weeks. And it was brutal, but it was beautiful. It
And
was awesome.
I heard all of the anecdotes about how Elon tries to shave a fraction off a penny and gives incentives to employees if they do that off of part. The best process is no process, the best part is no part, etc. So that is exactly what you're talking about there. That's awesome. Switch gears. Penultimate question. Peter Zeihan, he has a lot of pessimism about EVs and everything. And I know he's worked for the oil industry, but it stunned me when he made that EV video about Tesla and everything else. You know, he's a very knowledgeable guy, super smart guy, but he clearly didn't do his homework about the whole space. But that did rattle a lot of people. And again, it breaks my heart when people get dissuaded from investing in the asymmetric bet of our lives. That's one of the reasons I have this channel here. What's your take on Peter Zeihan and what he said about EVs?
Yeah, so I viewed Peter the same way. You know, I've come around a little bit because when he put out that video, I only watched some of it because once he started saying what I was like, I had to turn off. I'm like, dude, you literally don't know what you're talking
only
about.
9 minutes.
Just move on. You know,
Yeah.
Not even, dude.
Yeah.
But it's I've spoken to other people about it too. I think Peter is a valuable resource for geopolitics and understanding broader trends. I think he's a valuable resource from that standpoint. However, he clearly doesn't understand disruption and innovation. He's much more about like studying what happens. And I talked to my community about this. I talked to Tom Nash on my channel about this. He kind of helped me think through this a little bit. There are certain minds that are so driven by the broader things that are happening in the world that when something disruptive comes up, that is that like once in a lifetime opportunity, it doesn't register in their radar because they don't know what to look for. And so what they do is they reference the broader trends that are happening as the thing that says, hey, this is where we're going to end up because this is the broader trend. But there are certain things in history that you have a disruption and then it's completely different. It's completely different. And being from the oil industry, I think he has a natural bias to be skeptical of anything that would disrupt oil. And I can understand that. But I would encourage Peter, if he watches this, I would encourage Peter to spend more time researching Tesla, spend more time in the revolution that's happening in transportation, spend some time driving a Tesla for a few weeks and see how that changes your perception, or perspective rather. And then see if you still land in the same conclusion. If so, that's fine. You did your research. But to me, it just seems like it's somebody that's working off of data sets that do not apply to this story. And I encourage him to continue saying whatever he wants, but I think he's completely wrong on this one.
Awesome. Final question. Now, I could ask you a softball, what's your favorite food? You obviously are advertising it on your t-shirt, which is
one of my favorite ones.
A life-saving berry, everybody. Try eat blueberries every day or at least 3 times a week. What's your favorite cheese?
Yeah, dude, I actually go back and forth with this one because it's like I like milder cheeses, and it's going to be such a boring answer, but I'm going to have to go with mozzarella. Mozzarella. Because you can eat a lot of it and it doesn't overpower. You can have it, on like, you can put it on bruschetta, you can have a mozzarella pizza, you can just snack on it, it's low calorie, doesn't really bloat me like the other cheeses do because I'm a little lactose intolerant, it's like, and this is probably too TMI, but I don't care. I love mozzarella cheese. I love mozzarella cheese. Now with a wine, it's a different story, but mozzarella cheese is great.
Awesome. And just so the audience knows, I don't eat cheese, but if I had to, it would be mozzarella too. So we're like kindred spirits. I just want to remind everyone one more time, I'm going to share this slide. I probably won't be able to get it back, but please remember, subscribe to The Robots Are Coming. Farzad's channel, it's amazing. I appreciate you spending time with us here in the audience. And don't forget, if you want some entertainment, free entertainment, follow him on Twitter too. I don't know if I got those mixed up. That is, that's Twitter. Yeah, that's the Twitter one to look for. And we like going back and forth. So big thank you again. We're going to do this again. I'm going to come on your channel. And we're going to make this fun too. So we'll be doing that real soon. And thank you for the time. Sorry for keeping you so long. We had so much ground to cover, but I truly enjoyed picking your brain, and a great brain you have. And everybody as well.
Oh, man.
This guy was educated as a mathematician, and look how far he's gone in life. Numbers are important.
Yeah, I don't remember anything from my math courses, but sure. Thank you so much. No, I'm honored to be on your channel. Yeah. I'm honored to be on your channel. It's a really very kind words. Thank you to your viewership for sticking around and listening to me ramble on about Tesla and all this stuff. And I hope it was valuable and informative. And yeah, thank you again for bringing me on. It was honestly a super fun time. So
we covered like 40 topics, and there's tons of nuggets for everybody. And our job is to guide people so they can be financially free. That's the whole aim. No frills, no shills, just knowledge. Thank you again, sir. Have a good night. And say hi to producer wife, too. See you soon.
Will do.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.